10:30 a.m. on April 7, 1943, First Lieutenant James Swett was flying routine patrol over Guadalcanal when radar suddenly confirmed what pilots had been dismissing for weeks as false alarms. A massive Japanese formation was inbound. Swett was just 22 years old, with only 197 hours in the F4F Wildcat and no combat experience. This was his very first real mission. The incoming raid was the largest Japanese air attack since Midway. 67 Val dive bombers escorted by more than 100 Zero fighters. Against them, only a handful of American Wildcats were airborne. The odds were catastrophic. Swett's division was led by Captain Joseph Foss, already a legendary ace. The 4 Wildcats climbed hard toward the enemy, knowing they had only minutes before the bombers reached the Allied fleet anchored at Tulagi. At 8,000 feet, Swett saw them clearly for the first time. Endless lines of aircraft stretching across the sky. Zeros circled above. Bombers rolled into attack. Formations below. Swett's Wildcat was slower and weaker than the Zero, but it was tough, heavily armed, and deadly at close range. As Foss led them into a head-on attack, Swett armed his guns, centered the glowing Pipper, and prepared to fire his weapons in combat for the first time in his life. The first attack happened fast. Foss opened fire and destroyed a Val instantly. Swett followed, locking onto another bomber and firing a short burst. The cockpit shattered, and the aircraft fell burning into the sea. Seconds later, he destroyed a second Val, then narrowly avoided a Zero diving past his wing. In less than 6 minutes, Swett had already downed 3 enemy bombers. The sky had turned into chaos, explosions, tracer fire, screaming engines. His formation was gone. Swett was alone. Ignoring the Zeros above, Swett dove after the bombers attacking the ships below. Using altitude, speed, and surprise, he struck again and again. He attacked from the sun, from directly above, from behind, each time firing short, precise bursts. One Val disintegrated mid-air when its bomb detonated. Another burst into flames and cartwheeled into the water. By the time Swett checked his ammunition, he had destroyed 6 bombers in less than 12 minutes. His hands were steady, his breathing controlled. Training had taken over completely. Anti-aircraft fire now filled the sky as Allied ships fought desperately below. Swett pressed the attack despite the danger. Diving after another Val, he fired one final burst at close range, igniting its engine and sending it crashing into Tulagi harbor. 7 kills. Then disaster struck. A 40mm shell from Allied ship fire tore through Swett's left wing. Fuel streamed out, controls stiffened, and moments later his engine began overheating. Enemy fire had damaged his oil system. At just 3 miles from Henderson Field, the engine seized completely. Silence replaced the roar of battle. With no chance of reaching land, Swett chose to ditch near Gavutu Island. He executed the landing perfectly, but the impact smashed his face into the panel, breaking his nose. The aircraft sank rapidly. Trapped underwater by tangled parachute lines, Swett nearly drowned before cutting himself free. He surfaced exhausted, bleeding, and without flotation. His life vest failed. His raft failed. Alone in open water, weighed down by gear, he began swimming toward shore. Exhaustion nearly killed him. Sharks circled as he struggled forward yard by yard. He discarded his jacket, then his flight suit, fighting panic and pain with every breath through his broken nose. Just as his strength failed completely, a Coast Guard rescue boat spotted him and pulled him from the water. He had survived. Back at Henderson Field, Captain Foss and intelligence officers confirmed the impossible. 7 confirmed kills on Swett's first combat mission. The news spread instantly. Within days, his actions were verified by ship crews and pilots. 3 days later, Admiral William Halsey personally recommended James Swett for the Medal of Honor. President Roosevelt approved it that September. Swett received the medal later that year, becoming a national symbol of courage. Despite the fame, Swett returned to combat, adding more victories before becoming an instructor. He trained future pilots with lessons earned in blood and fire, stay calm, conserve ammunition, never panic, trust your training. By war's end, he had become a legend not because of luck, but because preparation met opportunity under impossible pressure. James Swett died in 2009, but his legacy endures. His 7 kills in 15 minutes remain one of the most extraordinary feats in air combat history, not because of numbers alone, but because a 22-year-old rookie on his first mission faced overwhelming odds and prevailed. His story proves that when training, courage, and discipline align, ordinary humans can achieve the extraordinary. Young Marine pilot, first combat mission, 7 enemy aircraft destroyed, survived impossible odds. The story appeared in newspapers across the United States. Life magazine ran a feature article with photographs. Swett became a symbol of American fighting spirit. Other naval aviators began using his name as a benchmark. To do a Jimmy Swett meant to achieve a status in a single mission. It became the ultimate goal for every fighter pilot in training. But Swett didn't stop flying combat missions. He returned to VMF-221 and continued flying from Henderson Field and later from other bases as the war moved north. By August 1943, he'd accumulated 15.5 confirmed kills. The half-kill came from sharing credit with another pilot on a bomber they both attacked. He was shot down 2 more times, once over La Vela in the Solomon Islands, the second time over Raba. Both times he survived. The second shootdown resulted in a 3-day ordeal in the jungle before friendly natives found him and paddled him back to Allied lines in a dugout canoe. Swett rotated back to the United States in late 1943 for instructor duty. He trained new fighter pilots at Naval Air Station Jacksonville in Florida. He taught them everything he learned: attack from above and behind when possible. Short bursts conserve ammunition. Never follow a damaged enemy all the way to the water. You become vulnerable. Watch for friendly fire. When operating near ships, always know your fuel state and the location of the nearest friendly airfield. Most importantly, stay calm. Panic kills more pilots than enemy fire. After the war ended in August 1945, Swett remained in the Marine Corps Reserve. He flew F4U Corsairs during the Korean War, though he saw no combat. He retired from the Marine Corps Reserve as a colonel in 1970. By then, he'd logged over 5,000 flight hours in military aircraft. He settled in Northern California and rarely spoke about his Medal of Honor or his April 7th mission. When asked about that day, he typically said he'd been lucky. Right place, right time, good training, nothing more. James Swett died on January 15, 2009, at age 88. He was buried with full military honors at Quantico National Cemetery in Virginia. His funeral was attended by hundreds of Marines, naval aviators, and family members. Many of the attendees were pilots who trained under him or studied his tactics. The Medal of Honor citation was read aloud during the service. It described his actions on April 7, 1943, in precise detail. 7 enemy aircraft destroyed, continued fighting despite damage to his aircraft, successfully ditched and survived. The citation concluded with a phrase that defined Swett's entire military career: extraordinary heroism and disregard for his own safety. The April 7th raid on Tulagi was the last major Japanese air offensive in the Solomon Islands campaign. The Japanese lost 42 aircraft that day, American losses were 7 fighters. Swett personally accounted for 16th of all Japanese losses. His performance that day influenced tactical doctrine for the rest of the war. Flight instructors used his engagement as a case study in effective fighter tactics. Attack decisively. Conserve ammunition. Maintain situational awareness. Accept calculated risks, but don't be reckless. These principles became standard training for all Marine fighter pilots. The impact of Swett's mission extended beyond tactics. It proved that proper training could overcome lack of experience. Swett had 197 flight hours when he engaged 150 Japanese aircraft. He had never fired his guns in combat, yet his training was so thorough that he performed flawlessly under extreme pressure. This realization changed how the Navy and Marine Corps approached fighter pilot training. More emphasis on gunnery, more focus on tactical decision-making under stress, more realistic combat scenarios during training flights. Today, Swett's F4F Wildcat is long gone, somewhere at the bottom of Tulagi Harbor, but his legacy remains. The Marine Corps University at Quantico includes his April 7th mission in its curriculum on air combat tactics. The National Museum of the Marine Corps displays his Medal of Honor and flight gear. Aviation historians consider his 7 kills in 15 minutes one of the most remarkable achievements in aerial combat history. Not just because of the numbers, but because of the circumstances. First mission, overwhelming odds, friendly fire damage, near-death experience, survival against all probability. Swett's story answers a fundamental question about combat. Can training overcome inexperience? Can preparation substitute for proven ability? His April 7th mission proved the answer is yes. Given proper training, even a pilot on his first combat sortie could achieve extraordinary results. This wasn't luck. Swett made dozens of tactical decisions during that 15-minute engagement. Every decision was correct. Attack angle, target selection, ammunition conservation, escape maneuvers, ditching procedure. Each decision reflected his training and his ability to apply that training under maximum stress.